Hello, everybody. How's it going? Yeah. Hi. So my name's Eric Vespi. I write for a site called Ain't It Cool News, and I've been drafted into introing this movie for you guys. I haven't seen it yet, so if it stinks, it's not my fault. All right, so we are live in Austin, and we have 14 other Alamos. I think that the camera's there, so that means I'm pointing at 14 other theaters right now, and they're all going to be watching this with us. Don't tell them I think you're the best theater, though. I think this is the best one. So who remembers 1999 when this movie came out? All right, or when the first Blair Witch did. That was an event unlike anything I'd ever seen. It like ridiculously destroyed. Oh, there's more lights. I don't like it. It like destroyed pop culture for a little bit, if you remember. But everything that I've heard about this movie is it is as good, if not better, than the original. So I'm putting it up real high right now. So that means that there's only we can only go down from here, right, Adam? Right? Good. No? Oh, I'm really screwing this up, aren't I? No, okay, so I want to make sure everybody knows that there's going to be a Twitter Q&A afterwards, so all the other 14 theaters, your version of raising your hand is to tweet the Alamo, hashtag AskAlamo, is that correct, Brandy? Yeah. All right, so get those questions ready when you're watching the movie, and everybody in here doesn't have to worry about that, you just throw up your hands. But before we start, I want to bring up the writer and the director of this movie. So we have Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I thought you did a great job. You just didn't mention enough Book of Shadows, but
That was a
I think
fantastic
we'll get
Well,
through that.
that's the secret, right? We're actually showing Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows instead of your movie.
Well, this is actually what was the title that you had for it? It's Blair Witch.
Blair Witch 2 Book of... Oh, no.
Blair Witch
Blair
Book
Witch
of
3
Shadows.
Book of Shadows 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, and in a way, all three films have destroyed pop culture just a teeny bit.
Just a little bit? All right, well, so what do you say to prepare these guys for what's about to come? Is there anything that you can say?
I mean, it looks like everyone's drinking. So, yeah, I don't know that we have anything to add. I mean, we just, thanks for coming out and thanks for having us. And
Yeah, no, I mean, like in all seriousness, it is really awesome that we were able to like kind of do our sort of roller coaster ride version of Blair Witch. I mean, and you'll know what I mean by the end of this. Like for me, I grew up in Alabama and I lived in this like shitty town in the middle of nowhere. And so whenever the original Blair Witch Project came out, it was like one of those like kind of first affirmations I ever had that you didn't need like contacts in the industry or money or like even steady camera work to actually be able to make a career in this business. And it's really cool that it's kind of come back around, a movie that was so important to both of us, and they were able to kind of give our kind of it's really a love letter to the original film. So here we go. Yeah.
All right, these two will be back for a Q&A after, so get ready for that. And just the regular Alamo stuff, you guys have been here before. No talking, texting, keep your phones off. Don't use it to, I fucking hate it when you use it to use the flashlight on the menu. Don't do that. So you know all the rules. Enjoy the movie. I can't wait to see it myself. All right, bye.
Hello? Does this work? Does it work everywhere? Is it working? I know it's working in this room. Is it working everywhere? Do you guys see me in wherever we are? I have no feedback loop. I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome to the stage Mr. Simon Barrett and Mr. Adam Wingard, the creators of The Blair Witch. Watch where you sit, gentlemen. There's some odd little surprises.
Are we sitting?
Sorry for whoever did
We don't
that.
have to sit. We can stand if you want to stand. But
No, I want to sit.
Okay. So before we begin, there are some ground rules
Yeah.
about question and answer. Do you want to talk about it, Simon?
So because we're streaming this online, we're going to be a little careful about spoilers for the Q&A of the film you just watched. So no questions about the film itself.
It sounds like a joke.
But actually, in all seriousness, we won't answer any questions that are like too spoilery. So I mean, you can ask them because I don't think the people online can hear you. They'll just see us like shaking our heads in kind of shame.
Well, if the people online are watching a Q&A for a film they haven't seen, they deserve to have it spoiled anyways. But
I don't know at this. Yeah, I don't know what our online demographic is for this. Maybe we can find out later.
I should have asked this before we sat down, but the folks in the other markets, I want to reiterate how you ask questions. I believe it's Ask Alamo. It's we use one of those hashtags. Hashtag Ask Alamo. Okay, so if you use that hashtag Ask Alamo, we got people fielding for non-spoilery questions, and they will be read into the microphone in concert with some of our live questions here in this room. I'm going to start things off with a couple of hopefully non-spoilery questions. So you guys have relatively recently finished filming what looks to be, maybe it's movie magic, I don't know, a really grueling sludge match in the woods at night in scary circumstances. When you're doing that, does that ruin camping for you? Does that ruin like going to the woods for the rest of your life?
I never liked camping. In fact, there was a line in this movie that got cut because it didn't add anything to the plot, but it was really important to me to have a character say at one point, camping always seems like it's going to be more fun than it is. But then it was like, well, that actually doesn't add much to the Blair Witch legend. So
yeah, the scene where Brandon's trying to put together the tent, I feel like is an example of what it's like when I go camping. And usually my girlfriend ends up having to put the tent up for me, and that's kind of always a little demasculating, but you know.
Camping's fun for like 2 hours, and then you're like, wait, I could be in a bed.
I mean, when I was a young man, I saw Jaws, and I was subsequently scared to go in the water. But I know you don't like camping, but if you find yourself alone in the woods, is that going to be a traumatic experience now, or is it going to be a joyful experience for you?
Well, we'll probably just start thinking about like how difficult it is to make a movie in the woods, and just be glad that we're not making a film in the woods, and then it'll probably be a great experience.
I mean, realistically, we live in Los Angeles now. If we find ourselves alone in the woods, we're probably making a Blair Witch sequel. So we'd be like, oh, our first movie, the movie was a success. This is great.
I don't think this is a spoiler, and if it is, it's going to be the last words that come out with a question mark at the end from me. But you were involved in the music for the film. Can you talk about that decision? How did that come to be? And then I don't think this is a spoiler, but there is like a snippet of a song that's so badass that I want to know how that song was brought into the movie. I don't know if it's yours or not, but in the
NKVD song that
is that the metal one that's playing?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a band called NKVD, and it was just something that I was like really stoned and listening to a lot while we were making the film, and it was kind of it was one that was always like my top choice to just play in that moment, just because it's just. Especially for that, that type of music, it just like really stands out. There's a lot of like metal that, is really good, but it doesn't like just like immediately jump at you within like 3 seconds like that song does, and it's also kind of ridiculous, which I love too. But yeah, no, like the music in this was interesting because when I did my first cut of the film. I felt like it needed more, but I was really trying to make sure that I wasn't breaking the found footage rules. So obviously, I knew that we didn't need a score for the film. But whenever the first film came out, I remember the trailers had they would always use that piece of music by Tony Cora that played in the end credits for Blair Witch Project, and that's really the only piece of score in that original film, as far as I can remember, is just the end credits thing, which is just that really kind of drony, like a lot of reverberated kind of metal clanking type of sounds and stuff. You know, growing up, that always really stood out to me, and I remember even when the soundtrack came out for the first film. It was called Josh's Mix or something like that, and I remember being really disappointed that it was a bunch of
grunge.
Yeah, I think it had like Marilyn Manson and stuff on it or something. I can't remember. And I remember always almost buying the soundtrack but not doing it, just because of what I really wanted is I just wanted a lot of music like that stuff in the end credits. So like over the years, whenever I would be making any type of drones or atmospheres for movies, I would always actually think about that Blair Witch thing. Because one of the easiest things, honestly, to do is to take pre-existing sounds and like fuck with them in your computer, and then they just sound really evil and cool. And so that was kind of my like entrance into doing music altogether, and I've dabbled doing some stuff more like synthy over the years that kind of combine kind of atmospheric stuff like that. Usually I just call them atmospheres, because I didn't have the guts to call it real music. But with this one, it was one of those things where, like I said, I got down to the first edit of the movie, and it just didn't quite, jump out as much as I wanted, and so I started kind of fucking around with these kind of atmospheres, and they became a little bit deeper and crazier as time went on, and then the end credits in this one is the most kind of structured piece of music. Most of it is very kind of flowing and ambient, and there are kind of like themes and soundscapes that kind of define certain characters and stuff, but they're very subtle. And as a matter of fact, I kind of had to fight to get a music by credit on this film, because initially some of the producers were like, well, not the producers, I don't know who it was that
It was me.
who has to approve that kind of thing, but it was kind of like, we don't hear any music in this film, you know what I'm saying? But then some of our executives stood up for it, and then but yeah, we're actually doing a soundtrack release, and in addition to the stuff that you hear in the film, which you can hear a lot better when it's actually turned up and less subtle, it's on there. And then I created a couple more melodic pieces for the soundtrack as well, which utilize a little bit more kind of synthy stuff mixed with a bunch of evil shit.
You realize that by adding some sort of melodic tracks, you're going to actually complete the circle, and you're going to destroy the hopes of Sung Young Boy, that really all he wants is like ambient music.
I sing on it. I'm like, yeah, Blair Witch. Don't go in the woods tonight. Yeah, actually, that would have been awesome if it was more music like that in Josh's mix, but I suspect that it wasn't. I think it was probably more, yeah.
It was just like what was in the top 20 that week.
Exactly, I think so.
Well, I find it too nerve-wracking to edit myself for spoilery questions, so I'm going to open it up to the audience, both here and elsewhere. So I guess I'm going to call from this live audience here first, and then I guess randomly somehow people are going to intersperse into the microphones that represent the rest of the world. But for now, you, sir, right there.
Yeah, when the trailer initially dropped for this, it was titled The Woods. So then, of course, you guys released that it was actually a Blair Witch movie at, I think, Comic-Con. Can you talk about the thinking of doing that kind of, taking that kind of a risk with the audience?
So I think I'm breaking protocol, right? You probably want them to come up to the microphone to. Oh yeah, I'll repeat it. I'll repeat the questions. This question was about the little bit of trickery that you guys did. All the initial trailers and teaser were about this movie called The Woods, and then at Comic-Con, voila, you had this great little reveal with the poster artwork. So can you talk about the inspiration for that idea?
Yeah, I mean, we'd always never really hyped our movies up too much in advance, and kept them secret until they premiered, but no one ever noticed. And to the point where actually some of our films are still secret to most people. But with this, we knew it was a bigger deal, it was a bigger brand, and Lionsgate kind of told us from the start that they wanted to keep it really under wraps. It was just two executives for a little while. It was actually the two people who bought You're Next. who we developed this with, and they kept it a secret at Lionsgate itself. Because Lionsgate like knew that they were making like a low budget horror movie called The Woods, but like they had a Hunger Games movie to like promote, and they just didn't care, so we were really under the radar. And the reason for that was, I mean, both like obviously it doesn't benefit anything to kind of like start the conversation like, oh, we're making like a new Blair Witch, like please debate online for the next 3 years if you think that's a good idea or not. We didn't feel like that was the most confident way to present this. We felt the most confident way was to, show the movie to people and then reveal it, which is what we ended up doing. But we weren't quite sure if it was going to work out.
Well, yeah, and in addition to that, it was one of those things going into this that we knew that the original film was, known, not just as a movie, but in terms of it's synonymous with its marketing campaign where, when it originally came out, they marketed it as though Heather, Josh, and Mike were real people that disappeared out in the woods, and a lot of people believed in that. And so going into this, we knew we had to do something really interesting, but we couldn't repeat that because if you tried that, again, everybody just call you an asshole, and it wouldn't be believable. So this was one of those things. I don't know if that was initially the idea. Like the secrecy was always there, even like Simon, whenever we went in and we didn't even know what we were meeting on initially for this film, it was always secret all the way through. And I think it really what happened was just at a certain point, we kept the secret so long that we kind of realized, wait a minute, this is like the kind of hook that we can use. We've actually gone at this point years keeping this thing secret, and if we just keep it secret a little while longer, then we can blow people's minds, and then I think it did work.
And they were clever, like they never actually said in a trailer or the poster like the woods. It always said like there's something in the woods. So that people like when they were like, you guys lied to us, we'd be like, not technically.
We didn't want to be liars. Yeah.
And then also the Blair Witch Project was originally conceived under the name of the Woods movie. So it was somewhat of a reference that, like, as far as I can tell, literally no one got. And maybe I'm even not to the point that I'm starting to doubt that bit of information that I just gave you all. I'm actually going to go look that up, but I think it's true.
And we also just wanted to really confuse Lucky McKee,
Yeah. And also fans of the Natalie Dormer vehicle, The Forest.
What about your actors? I mean, were they at what point? I mean, did you sign them on for a movie called The Woods? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, our casting directors never knew the film that we were making, which made this a challenge.
What about the little wooden, when these start to appear? Did somebody say, "Hey"?
Oh no! I mean, they figured it out. Like, sorry.
We didn't take these into the auditions, but. No, they, like whenever they were auditioning for it, Simon had written kind of like safe drafts for it. And so like every time it mentioned the word Blair Witch, it said car wraith. And I'm saying that like very carefully because the last time I said it, somebody like went online and they thought that I said car rape, which I don't even know what that would be, But
Wait,
like
really?
we replaced that.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, I can't believe that there was something about car. I don't know. I don't even know what a car rape would be. But anyway, so
we need to talk about that later.
But yeah, like so, like all those like Burkittsville, any of the kind of signifiers of the Blair Witch, project, were changed. And at the time, I have to be honest, like Simon and I were kind of like, nobody cares that we're making this film. So
I was really annoyed about it.
Like nobody's like expecting this. So it's like, the secrecy is kind of like overdone. But, in retrospect, it's like I'm so glad we did because it became such an important aspect to, the way that we did it. But it really did make things difficult during the making because in addition to things like that, even trying to find crew out in Vancouver was really difficult because, you go to interview somebody and you're kind of like, yeah, we're doing this movie and it sounds exactly like a Blair Witch ripoff. And, you can't tell them what it is until you hire them.
It's super low budget, found footage, set in the woods. But trust me, you want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's gonna be.
You've never heard of us, but you want to work with us. And,
And, I think part of it was that you and I just always felt like the secret thing wasn't going to work out. It felt like it was going to leak. Like it was like 2 years in, we're like,
well, and it almost did because like in 2015, the summer that we were shooting the film, Brad Misko over at Bloody Disgusting, he released an article, And in the article, it was saying that The Woods is actually a secret Blair Witch film. And we were like freaking out. We're like, holy shit, what happened? You know, and like we're calling Lionsgate and be like, listen, we didn't leak it to Brad. I know that we've made movies with him and stuff, but like it wasn't us. And but then and they just said like, don't confirm or deny it. You know, just ignore it. And it was really funny because we immediately realized that it wasn't going to pick up because you go into the comments section on that article and all the comments are like, you are full of shit. There's no way they're making a Blair Witch film, you know. And if you go down, I mean, that article's still there, and you just got to go to the comments section.
It's good.
And
It's
I'm
good
sure
stuff.
Brad felt so vindicated whenever
Oh
the
yeah,
news came
for
out.
sure.
And,
Yeah, I mean we've done interviews.
but
for
there's
him.
like dozens of comments just like being like, "You're a fucking asshole. There's no way that they're doing this. You're always wrong, motherfucker." You know,
Another
like, they're
bag
really
of
hostile.
garbage from Mr. Disgusting. Yeah, like God bless Bloody Disgusting's readers for despising the site itself. You know, that worked out really in our favor at that time. But going back to your question, the actors found out the movie they were in after they'd signed their deals. And they might have had some clause that, like, if it turns out that you agreed to be in a Blair Witch movie, you can back out. But they didn't take it.
All right. Was that what? Have we gotten one question or two?
I think we got
let's,
one- we got one
let's,
from-
let's up the pace. There we go. Right here in the center.
Visually, the movie looks amazing, and it looks like all practical effects.
Yeah.
How much did y'all have to go back and do CG, if any?
Everything's
Oh,
practical.
wait, we gotta
Sorry.
repeat that question. We have people
oh.
in audiences. So, question is, actually, it was a compliment first. Said, movie looks awesome.
That was my favorite part.
Yeah, we could just bask in that for a moment. It looked like most of it was practical. How much of it was CGI, if any?
So yeah, we like it was really important to me not to do CGI unless absolutely necessary. So anything that you saw in the woods that may or may look like a creature, that was definitely practical. That was actually there, and CGI was only utilized for like burn-ins on the any screens people are looking at, and the glitches and there was a couple paint outs, of like. Either camera equipment they got in the shot, or there was a couple trails that were really visible that really, were the, because sometimes the only way to get to the set, you just had one little path that you would go down, and so whenever you're doing these drone shots, it just looks like there's like a highway leading right through the woods to where you are, and so we painted that kind of stuff out, but yeah, the CGI is to a minimum.
Are there any questions from the universe outside of this room?
Yeah, there's some Twitter questions going
Okay.
on.
Okay, let's do that.
At Dios Neko wants to know, were there things that the actors were not down for doing?
Kissing Simon.
Yeah.
That was
We
during
also
the-
had to do some CGI pan-outs on me trying to kiss the actors during scenes. That was actually pretty expensive.
No, I mean, like if you look at for instance, like the tunnel sequence at the end where Callie Hernandez crawls through that tunnel, that was like our first question is like,
Yeah.
are you claustrophobic, and or
And
can
if
you
not,
do this
you will
because
be. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, because that tunnel, the way we created it was literally the size. It was measured to her shoulder width and no wider than that. So, and the thing that Simon and I had always talked about, in when Simon wrote it and the way we were designing it, is we were inspired kind of like that scene in Aliens where Bishop's crawling through that tunnel, and obviously ours isn't quite that small. Otherwise, you couldn't fit a camera in there. But so like. For her to do that, actually, there was no like movie magic, like, oh, we just, for that one shot, she's just in this little tunnel and you can remove it. Like, to actually do that scene, we created this whole 60-foot long tunnel on the soundstage. And to go through it, you had to go from one end to the other. And you could technically take pieces apart out of it, but it would be a huge reset and it would completely fuck us. So it was kind of like only if it was an absolute, necessity, in the moment, if somebody was having a horrible panic attack or something. And as a matter of fact, during one of the takes, like whenever we were doing the scene, the only way I could communicate with Callie was through a walkie-talkie, so I'm outside of the tunnel on the monitor watching and stuff, and I can, kind of tell her what to do and all that kind of stuff. And when we did the take where she gets actually stuck in that one part and the camera's facing towards her, it's actually not, just to make it even more claustrophobic, it's not even just her in that tunnel. There's also a stunt person behind her who's holding her legs, and then in the front to make sure that everything was cool with the camera, a camera operator came in the other side of the tunnel in front of her. And the first camera operator we sent in actually got in like a couple feet into it, and he just started freaking out, and we had to like pull him out of it. And then this other guy went in, and it was really funny because the first take we did of it, we get everything set, everybody's in place, the camera op's in there, the stunt person's in there. And so Callie's getting ready, and so I'm like, okay, just go when you're ready, And so she's like looking down, and it really looks like she's kind of freaking out. Like she's sitting there and she's starting to breathe heavier and heavier. And you could tell the camera operator didn't realize that she was just getting into character, because like it was just dead silence as we're watching it, And then suddenly you just hear this voice like, "You're fine. just keep coming towards me." And then Callie was kind of like, no, I'm good. It was really funny.
She was like, "I'm acting."
Yeah. But I mean, it was really hard. I mean, it was like we did that quite a few times, and every time she came out the other end, she looked more and more disgusting, and it just looked like it was just like a hell birth coming out as she would like pour out of this tunnel. But she was like totally down, and honestly, we couldn't have done it if she wouldn't. I mean, I don't know what we would have done, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't like pull anything on the actors that wasn't scripted. I mean, they knew what they were getting into, so yeah, I mean, they were pretty much troopers. Yeah, I mean, it was not an easy shoot for them.
Well, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, please do not tell your friends that there's a tunnel. In the
we forgot the spoiler.
I don't. That's not like in the
It's
realm
like
of spoilers.
the whole UK trailer is just the tunnel. So I think
that's
we're
true.
safe.
That's
We're
right.
good. It's not really.
That's right. Yeah,
Doesn't qualify
yeah,
if it's in
yeah.
the trailer.
So all of England.
Don't make a
has
big
already been
deal about the
spoiled.
tunnel, right?
So anyway, it's a small.
So let's take another question from Twitter.
At GV Marsala wants to know how much of the film was shot on location and how much of it was shot in studio.
So the house interiors and including the underground of the house.
And there may or may not be a house in Blair Witch.
Yes. Hypothetically, if our film were to end in a house of some sort, the interiors of that would be on a soundstage, and everything else is actually out in the woods or existing locations.
Well, actually, there was one tent shot that we picked up in LA.
Oh yeah, but we filmed it in a garage.
Yeah,
Does that
so,
count? Yeah.
The
Yeah,
grueling elements of an LA garage.
like
It was mildly hot.
It was. I mean, it was quite hot.
Are we gonna do one more from Twitter and then one more from this live room here?
Twitter is like spoiling.
Yes.
At HeTax Sweet wants to know, are you planning on making another Blair Witch?
Are you planning on seeing the first one?
Yeah. So first things first.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same answer we give whenever people ask us if there's going to be your next two. It's like, no one saw the first one. I mean, we could make like a fan fiction film, I guess.
Yeah,
but,
we can do it with,
those
like, shadow
returns, I don't
puppets.
think go up. You know what I mean?
So I should probably interject at this point, and it's a very valid point, right? We're here seeing this early, and thank you to Lionsgate for making this happen. But you guys actually have a job to do now. If you like this movie, then use your, the movie's over, so you can use your devices and your phones in a non-spoilery way to vaguely tell people that it's an awesome thing to go and see Blair Witch.
Wait, these people didn't pay to see this film?
I have no idea. I just work here, buddy. I don't know how this works. Yes, but tell your friends to transact with Blair Witch, and then that's the key. That's the unlock to. Well, if you were gonna do another Blair Witch movie, what would you call it? What is the theoretical sequel name?
Geez, that's actually a really good question. The numbers get weird. Oh, you know what? That's an easy. We'd call it The Blair Witch. If we make a third one,
Blair
then I'm
Witches.
really out of it. Yeah, Blair Witches.
You got to do the plural. Blair Witch to the third power.
So I've got a question all the way in the back row. It's where it's really dark and people often get overlooked. So question all the way in the back. The gentleman would like for you to talk a little bit about the editing and the choices to switch between camera angles, the multitude of cameras within your movie.
Well, the editing was one of the scariest parts when we did this movie, because it was one of those things where it really wasn't until we were finished with the film that we even knew that we had a movie, because, as we were shooting, it was, because of all these like type of angles, and a lot of them are wide angle lenses, and it's the POV stuff. So it's really hard to kind of hide edits with those kind of things. We were constantly asking ourselves, like, how much is too much, and, how quick can we put this thing together? So when we were shooting, just to be careful, we always tried to run everything as one solid take, just in case, it felt too weird cutting the movie up all to hell. And fortunately, as you can see, we cut the movie all to hell, and it was pretty much fine. But it was really important going into it to me that this not be just another one camera found footage film. I wanted it to flow in a very kind of cinematic way, and also trying to combine that with the found footage aesthetic. And we had some kind of luck doing the VHS films before this, where we were able to kind of explore that multi-camera idea. And I remember whenever the first Blair Witch Project came out, one of the main things people asked was well, who edited the footage? And it's kind of interesting how that used to come up all the time when it came to found footage movies. But over the course of time, it feels like that's kind of not a question people really think that much about, because you're just so accustomed to the style of it. And also, we tried to cover our bases a little bit at the beginning of the film. Simon wrote the thing where it says, the following footage has been assembled by blah blah blah. But it makes a point to say that it's been edited. And so I mean, the editing was actually one of those things where once I actually sat down and started working on it, that was actually the first time I realized that the movie kind of worked, But the whole time we were shooting, it was just, we were kind of in a void, and it just really we had no idea,
But I remember one of your notes at a script stage was to because we'd come up with like the earpiece thing, and we talked about doing the drone, putting a drone in it when we were shooting The Guest. Which was our first time experimenting with drone shots. But I remember one of your notes in the script was that I should note that Lisa's handling her DSLR and Lane has his camera out and stuff, just to make sure we had options, not just in terms of coverage and stuff, but variety within that coverage.
Yeah, and and the way the movie's kind of laid out is we tried to make it so that basically the first half of the film is edited more like kind of a documentary, kind of hearkening back to the original Blair Witch Project. So there's lots of different cameras, and most of them are being handheld at the beginning of the film, and we kind of tried to get you into that reality more with the more kind of sloppy kind of handheld camera work that you're used to. And then as the movie gets more and more dangerous, or the predicament gets more dire, for the characters, there's less reason for them to actually be holding cameras. And so then we switch over to the Bluetooth cameras that they're wearing on their ears, because they're just rolling anyway. So it just makes common sense that that during all this action, that those are your primary source of video. And but I think it does kind of a cool thing where you start out with one experience, and then subtly as the film goes on, it becomes more and more of a POV kind of thing, and subtly you become more and more integrated with the story. And at the end of the film, we the main two cameras you have.
Are you spoiling it?
No.
All right.
The two main cameras we end up on, though, are still it's the most extremely shitty camera, the high 8 one, and the most high end one, which is the Bluetooth camera. And it's kind of fun to see how well those kind of things actually ultimately cut together. But they both are kind of there to accentuate the intensity of that final chase through the house. Spoiler.
And the movie may or may
Spoiler
not
alert.
accelerate to a crescendo of.
Yeah. Don't listen to what we just said.
So I have a super spoilery question that I'm not going to ask about battery life. But I'm not going to ask that question. We'll just talk about that later in your universe that you've created. But I think it's time to go back to Twitter for a question. One more question from Twitter.
At Deadly Miracle wants to know, what was your favorite part of shooting the film?
I didn't enjoy any aspect of making this film. Did you?
I'm trying to think.
I enjoyed our Comic-Con screening.
Yeah, no, it's funny. Like, I mean, I think Simon and I always end up being too kind of like stressed out and trying and problem solving when we're making our movies to enjoy it, and only after the fact does kind of like wounds heal, and the whole thing seems like kind of a fine experience for some reason. But I know the whole time with this film. I was constantly just worried that it was going to be a disaster, because of the found footage element of it. It made it feel like we were making our first film, for the first time all over again. So it didn't feel like you had any of that kind of like you could look back and say, well, last movie we did this and it worked fine. And normally, like a lot of the movies that I've directed, have a real emphasis on the soundtrack and the music and needle drop tracks and all that stuff. And we couldn't rely on any of those kind of tricks that we were used to, and so yeah, it was kind of a nerve-wracking experience. I'm sure there was a fun day. Oh, well, actually, one of the most fun times I had on it was, I like to kind of just keep the cast on edge, and there was this one night where. One of the location scouts for some reason had a Sasquatch costume, and which it was actually pitched to me as a Sasquatch costume, but it really looked like a shitty gorilla costume.
This is just a gorilla costume.
But during like one of the tense scenes at the campsite, I actually had this guy go out into the woods, and when we gave him the cue, he started sneaking slowly towards the campsite. And so we're in the middle of a scene, and suddenly somebody was like, wait, what the fuck is that? And everybody stops, and I'm like, hold on, wait, cut the cameras, hold on, wait, everybody just listen for a second. And the actors are all looking at me like, what's going on? And then you could just hear these like sticks. It sounded like something from the Blair Witch Project. It was like these sticks kind of breaking slowly in the woods, and you could tell it was something walking towards you. And I was trying to like play it up, and so I kept being like, holy shit, what is that? And I would like go closer to the edge of the woods. And I remember Callie like being like, no, what are you doing? Get back here. Like I think they thought it was like some sort of like bear or something like that. And then ultimately this shitty gorilla costume comes out of the woods, and it was fine. And then they were mad, and then we instantly got back to shooting.
Got back to work. I remember a time when we were sincerely not miserable, which was when we first saw the complete like house sets that Tom had built. That was not. I mean, we weren't actually filming then, because as soon as we started filming, it was miserable. But it was like during a weekend, and it was like when Tom was showing us his work, Tom Hammock, our production designer, who we work with on everything, it was like that was really cool. I was like this. That was the only time I wasn't unhappy.
We got time for one more question. It's the be-all, end-all capper, and we have veto power over this question. If it's not good enough, we're going to shut you down. So be sure
power
about it. Like you got it.
This is a confident hand up. Over
Yeah, it's still standing.
Oh, don't
So
butter him
far,
up
so
that
good.
way.
So far,
Just
so
get
good.
your question
Tim's
going.
about to
I see
veto
what
you
you're
just for
doing.
not asking a question.
Okay, so I know you guys. So I'll try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. But you guys took some liberties with the Blair Witch mythos. Did you guys talk to the original directors or writers at all, and maybe see if some stuff was okay, or were you given artistic liberty?
We're given a nod here to this question, so we'll go ahead and repeat that.
I think it's a reasonable question.
So the question revolves around the existing mythology of the Blair Witch Project, and did you consult with the creators, and what was that process like, if it existed?
Yeah. Well, it sort of didn't, but kind of in a way that like they were really cool with. Which is we'd worked with Eduardo Sanchez and Greg Hale, who on VHS2, and so we already were friends with them. But it had nothing to do with us getting hired to make this film. It was actually a complete coincidence. And the hardest part of keeping this a secret was like the 3 weeks before Lionsgate told them, when we kind of wanted to be like, hey, are you cool with us doing this? Because if not, you're not going to do it, even though we really wanted to, and so that was like the weird window, but they were thrilled, and Dan Myrick we then got to know through that process, and they kind of really gave us their blessing to just get creative with it and do what we wanted, and they kind of knew that like, the modern version of a sequel to this like couldn't totally adhere to what they'd done.
Well, Greg did give you one note. On
Yeah,
the
yeah,
script,
yeah. They did see the script, and they did give us notes like right before shooting, and I did.
and it was specifically not to give any spoilers away, but there was a note about the use of the basement and the attic, and we didn't really emphasize the basement quite enough, and obviously the mention of the attic was something that was kind of new, but really we weren't even trying to step on the the mythology at all. It was more like, I think the whole point that we were trying to get across is that there's not one definitive idea of what's actually going on in these woods. We wanted to constantly provide the audience with basically two examples of what it could be, because I think that that's more interesting than us ever, giving you a definitive idea of what's going on out there. But, even beyond that, like, we did consult with them in other ways too, where when we were building the house, we went to Ed and Greg and asked them if they had any better photos, of it, specifically of the basement, because when you see it in the film, it's very grainy, so it's hard to see all the details in it. And they pointed us in the right direction of some people who. They had some photos, and then they had some people who, before that house that was the original was shot in, was torn down. They like some people used to go up there hiking and would take photos of themselves standing in the corner and acting like jackasses and stuff. But they were like really clear photos. You could actually see way more details than you could in the original film. And so Tom Hammock, the production designer, he's a really brilliant guy that we've worked with on all of our films. And he actually took those photos, and he had his art department lay out they basically looked at all the way that the brick foundation was laid out on the walls in the basement, and they traced the exact bricks exactly as it was in those photos, and they made like kind of a two-dimensional version of it. And then whenever they made those bricks, they traced it exactly. So like the details in that basement are like 100% to the T, as much as we possibly could, just because like that's the main iconic thing that you remember from the original film, and it was important to try to get that right as
Yeah, I
possible.
mean, we really wanted to make the film, so that if you were to go back and watch the Blair Witch Project, immediately before or immediately after our movie, it would totally hold up. And really, yeah, it was really just that the original filmmakers just had a lot of trust in us, and when they read my script, they were into it, and they were like, they saw that that we were being really respectful to the mythology, and to the extent that I was extrapolating upon things or augmenting them, it was kind of within the canon that they'd created, the canon of what they'd created. So yeah, they kind of let us do what we wanted to from that point. But again, it was weird. We were just given a lot of trust from those guys.
Yeah, and really observant fans should keep a lookout for the actual 16 millimeter camera from the original film. It's in that basement. That was the most expensive prop to get, and it's on screen for like 2 seconds, but. Whenever you get the movie on Blu-ray, if you like search for it, we very discreetly put that camera in there, and for a low-budget film, that was a very expensive thing to get, but it was very important to get the exact one, and so technically, it's down there, and Heather's bones may or may not be down there too.
Yeah, we have a lot of little Easter eggs like that they appreciated, and because they're pretty much the only people in the world that would even get them at this point. So I think I think they were. I mean, they knew we were just huge fans, and so it was a pretty fun process.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here with us. And guys, we've got like @ and hashtags up on the screen. Use those things. Tell your friends. There's an awesome new horror movie coming down the pike. Go and see The Blair Witch. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. Woo.